He often ignored well-meaning advice, almost out of habit. Since he was frequently traveling, his wife Susan was the one who always kept an accurate calendar. Over the years, they had gotten used to regularly updating each other on their exact whereabouts. But on Thursday morning, things suddenly changed. At 11 a.m., his colleagues signed a new business agreement. Shortly after, they began preparations to solve a problem on the East Coast. For Early, a friendly problem solver and skilled negotiator, this kind of trip was nothing new. He was expected to be on the road for an entire week. The project was scheduled to be completed by Saturday. He flew out of Los Angeles around 9:15 p.m. and arrived in Seattle just after midnight. Not wanting Susan to pick him up from SeaTac Airport that late, he took an airport shuttle and got home to Bellevue at 1:30 in the morning. Before his flight, he had made the necessary changes to his tickets. His plane landed in Los Angeles for a short stopover, and by 1:45 p.m., he was already back on his way. While on the boat, he called Susan to let her know he was coming home earlier than expected. She was still at work, so he opened his briefcase, looked up her number, and called the reception desk. Sharon and Anderson, how can I help you? The receptionist answered. Is Jennifer available? Early asked, as he usually spoke directly with Susan's personal assistant. But today, things were different. The friendly receptionist explained that Jennifer, Mrs. Conroy, was off today and tomorrow. She asked if she could help instead. Can I maybe speak with Miss Conroy? He asked, slightly confused. May I ask who's calling? This is her husband. Please connect me, he said. After a brief pause, the receptionist responded, Mrs. Conroy is currently busy. I'm not sure if she has time to speak. I can leave a message for her. Early hesitated for a moment, then said, No, I'll talk to her at home tonight. Just tell her I called. Still, something about the call left him uneasy. He spent another 30 minutes trying to shake the strange feeling. Susan had told him just yesterday evening that she'd be in the office all day. She said she wouldn't be reachable. Maybe she was with a client or tied up in legal work. But something didn't sit right with him. What really bothered him was Jennifer's absence. Susan had always made sure that Jennifer's working hours lined up with hers. In the past, if Jennifer wasn't at work during Susan's shift, it was only due to private errands or illness. His jet landed in Seattle at 6:35 p.m., and he was dropped off at home. The house was dark. Susan wasn't there. That surprised him. She was usually home by 6 p.m. He quickly changed, threw his dirty clothes in the laundry, and made himself a grilled cheese sandwich for dinner around 8 p.m. But Susan still wasn't home. His nervousness grew as he sat in front of the TV. Where was she? If she'd been in an accident, someone should have called. Someone should have left a message. He couldn't help feeling angry and abandoned. When he tried calling her cell phone, he got an automatic message saying the number couldn't be reached. Maybe it was just turned off, but still, why would she turn it off? Then, at 9:20 p.m., his own phone rang. It was Susan. Her voice was filled with worry. Gee, I was already getting nervous, she said. I checked at the hotel after dinner, and they told me you had checked out. Are you okay? Where were you? Just a change of plans, he replied. You're home, right? Yes, I just finished tidying up the kitchen. You're coming back Sunday as planned, right? Where are you staying? He looked around at the empty kitchen. Something didn't feel right. His wife wasn't home, but she claimed she was. He noticed his dirty harness still sitting in the sink. I've been home all Sunday. We had our meetings earlier today at headquarters. You can always reach me on my mobile, he replied. Did something unusual happen today? She asked, her voice carrying a strange tone. I tried calling the office this afternoon, she added. Early was confused. Oh, well, no? Nothing special. I was with John Stickner at the time, she said. He really helped me this week with the Melrose account. I'm so grateful to him. Honey, it looks like I might be able to secure this partnership, she continued. John practically confirmed it after I sorted out that mess. Early didn't respond right away. Susan went on, trying to sound cheerful. Isn't that great? I just wish I could be there tonight to celebrate the beginning of this new opportunity. Please don't be mad, honey. And don't be late. I miss you so much. It gets so quiet in that big bed when you're not here. We'll celebrate on Sunday, when you get back. After a brief talk about their ongoing budget issues, the call ended. Early felt a tight knot in his stomach. The lies Susan had just told him were piling up, and he could feel it. Her words left a bitter taste in his mouth. Until recently, he had believed their marriage was solid, that their love was real and unshakable. But now, doubt had started to creep in. That night, he tossed and turned in the empty bed Susan had described, trying to sleep. At sunrise, he got up and stared at the ceiling, trying to plan his day. By 9 a.m., it was clear Susan wouldn't be coming home. He picked up the phone and called her office. Calmly and politely, he asked for Ms. Conroy. But instead of hearing Jennifer's name, the receptionist referred to her as Ms. Conroy. When she told him Susan wasn't available, he thanked her, said it wasn't urgent, and promised to call again on Monday. No problem, the receptionist replied with a cheerful tone. Ms. Conroy is expected back at 9 a.m. on Monday. You can reach her then. Early remembered his last conversation with Susan in detail. How she had told him she'd left notes in her office before getting into her SUV. That SUV, a dark green Explorer, was rarely used except for towing the caravan or during camping trips. None of their friends had ever seen her drive it. After dropping the Mercedes off at the garage, Early drove to Bellevue to check Susan's office. He slowly circled the parking lot, looking for her gray BMW, but it was nowhere to be seen. He opened his contacts and found the address for John Stickner's house. Feeling increasingly uneasy, he drove there. Stickner lived in Medina, in a large house hidden among thick trees. A tall, 2-meter red brick wall surrounded the property, nestled under towering firs. Early carefully pulled into the circular driveway, making sure not to block anything. As he passed the garage, his heart skipped a beat. Susan's BMW was parked inside. He had to stop for a moment, his mind struggling to process what he saw. His vision blurred, and he took a deep breath to steady himself. When he arrived back in Bellevue, it was nearly lunchtime, around 11:30 a.m. He ordered tea and a Belgian waffle, avoiding coffee, which upset his stomach. Even the waffle seemed too much for his nerves. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, and left the restaurant about an hour later. Before heading home, he drove once more past Stickner's house. This time, Susan's car was gone. He circled the area a few times, trying to stay hidden. But an hour passed without success. There was no sign of her car. As he returned home, he couldn't stop thinking about how his marriage, the life he had loved, was slowly falling apart. Back in the house, he didn't even have the energy to crack an egg. He wandered through the rooms, barely eating, surviving on snacks, juices, and cola. At 9:45 p.m., he got ready for bed. When Susan called again, she said the same thing as before, how empty the bed felt without him. She sounded sad, almost desperate. Early muttered something to himself, trying to hide his growing anger. Then she mentioned how lonely she felt, how hard it was for her to be alone. Confused, she asked him what he meant when he didn't respond right away. He brushed it off and agreed with her, saying yes, it must be lonely when you're by yourself. He wished her good night, told her he loved her, and went to bed around midnight. But his mind was flooded with questions. How much did she still love him? Was this somehow his fault? Maybe this was her way of reacting to something he had done. Maybe he had failed her somehow. Maybe she needed something he simply couldn't give. Could he do anything to fix it? He barely slept. And by 8 a.m., he was already awake. Around 10 a.m., he heard the sound of Susan's BMW pulling into the garage. He sat quietly in the dark living room, the lights off and the curtains drawn. Not long after, she walked in from the garage carrying a small travel bag. From his large leather armchair, he watched as she entered the kitchen. She was wearing a camouflage wrap skirt and a red, sleeveless blouse. The top buttons of her silky shirt were undone. Around her neck hung the Thai cloisonne necklace he had given her for their 3rd wedding anniversary. It highlighted her slender neck as she moved. She looked calm, relaxed, as if everything were perfectly normal. She walked slowly through the kitchen and stopped in front of the sink, glancing at the mess. She hadn't bothered to clean up after breakfast, or even put the dirty glasses from the night before into the dishwasher. Her eyes landed on the kettle on the stove. The water had just started boiling. Her tense gaze moved from one corner of the room to the next. She walked further into the kitchen, the dim light coming only from between the heavy curtains in the dining room. She passed the shelves with the stored supplies, glanced at the glass jars, and paused when she saw the travel bag in the room. She stood still for a moment, then turned toward the fireplace. And then she saw him. There he sat. Early hadn't moved. He sat silently in his chair, raising his cup for a sip of tea. Their eyes met. Susan froze. Her voice trembled as she broke the silence. "Oh my God, you scared me half to death. When did you?" The seconds stretched out like hours before Early finally spoke. His voice sounded hollow, distant, lifeless. Susan's knees gave out. She collapsed into a blue and white striped armchair across from him. "Why?" she whispered. "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me where you were? Where did you even stay last night?" Early took another sip of his tea, emotionless. "I called Thursday afternoon. You weren't at home. You weren't in the office. Jennifer wasn't there either. I spent the night in that big, empty bed you kept talking about, while I sat right here, in this chair, answering calls and listening to cars drive past as the sun warmed the street." It was Saturday. Outside, the day had already started. A pair of neighborhood teenagers argued loudly while a dog barked nonstop in the distance. The blinds and curtains in the living room stayed shut. The only sound inside was Susan's quiet sobs. Early stayed still, calm, neutral. He took another sip of tea. "I have the feeling," he said slowly, "that the bed you slept in Thursday and Friday night wasn't quite as lonely as you made it sound." He looked at her. His eyes were steady. "Please, Susan, tell me exactly what happened." Susan broke down completely. She covered her face with her hands and shook her head, crying. "Early, I love you. I just felt like I had to do it. It wasn't about how I feel about you, or about us. Please, please try to understand." "That doesn't make sense, Susan," he replied firmly. "How can it have nothing to do with us, if you cheated on me?" "I swear, G, it had nothing to do with how I feel about you. I just wanted to thank John," Susan said quietly, "to compensate him for what he did for me." Early watched his wife in silence, still holding his cup of tea. Then he stood up and went to refill it. As he came back from the kitchen, he asked calmly, "Would you like something?" She tilted her head slightly, saying nothing. He sat back down in his chair, eyes steady. His voice was soft, but firm. "Tell me, Susan, why did you feel you owed John Stickner so much that you had to break your vows to me?" Her response came quickly. "He didn't ask me for anything. He's an honorable man. He helped me with the Melrose account simply out of kindness. He knew the mess wasn't my fault. He never expected anything in return." "Then why did you offer it voluntarily?" Early asked. "That's what I don't understand. What you did was filthy. He didn't deserve that. And you're telling me it had nothing to do with us?" Susan looked down. "It wasn't because of anything you did. I told you. I felt grateful. I wanted to give something back. Something to help us both." Early sighed. "So it wasn't about me. It was about him. And yet, you're saying it has nothing to do with your love for me." After a moment, he continued, his voice gentle but full of sorrow. "If you're so upset that I describe your affair as dirty, does that mean you actually enjoyed it?" There was a long silence before he spoke again. "Do you remember, Susan, how I always promised you that you were mine? That we belonged to each other completely?" She nodded faintly. "You used to say that you were entirely mine. That without me, you were nothing. Can you remember how deeply I believed in that bond between us?" His voice was flat, emotionless, but she could still hear the tremble behind his words. "I am yours," Susan said. "What happened had nothing to do with you. With us. So you're telling me," Early said slowly, "that you were with him, and that means nothing? You gave yourself to him, and now I'm just supposed to pretend it didn't affect anything?" "I still belong to you," she whispered through tears. "Nothing has changed. I love you with all my heart. I'm yours. Every experience changes something," Early replied, his voice tight. "You came back from a sexual relationship with someone else. That leaves a mark." He paused, struggling to speak. "You did things, personal, intimate things, that are meant only for someone you love." His voice cracked. "Tell me, how many nights, Susan?" "Just 2, she whispered. "Only those 2 nights." Early sat in silence for a while. When he finally spoke again, his voice was calm, controlled. "I can't help but wonder, Susan, You say you belong to me, but you gave yourself away so easily. Like so many other men could have had what was mine. Susan broke down completely. She curled up, sobbing hysterically, arms wrapped around her knees, shoulders hunched. Her hair was tangled with tears as she buried her face in her hands. Early remained silent, thoughtful. The hours passed quietly as Susan wept beside him on the floor. It was a bright, silent Saturday in the neighborhood. The lights inside were off. The only sounds came from outside. Inside, the room was still, except for Susan's crying. Then the soft chime from the fireplace clock rang out, marking midday. Early spoke again, his tone steady. If you're suggesting that I should take revenge by being unfaithful, let me remind you, that won't fix anything. It won't bring balance. This is the end. He took a breath. If my loyalty means so little to you, then that says a lot about how little you value loyalty at all. Two wrongs don't make a right. He gently placed his empty teacup on the fireplace mantel and walked into the dining room. He pushed the curtains aside and looked out at the sunlit garden. I'm not the kind of man who hurts women, and certainly not my wife. His voice was quiet, almost sorrowful. My dear, confronting John Stickner now would be unwise. Even if you insist this wasn't his idea. Susan made a faint noise, maybe to protest, maybe to deny. Early continued. Think about what this means. He got your affection without having to do anything beyond helping you at work. And now, he might believe that affection is always available to him. He looked out the window. No matter what you say to him, no matter how much you try to explain, he'll think he can have you again. Easily. Maybe not everyone will see you that way, but he will. And over time, he may gain a lot of confidence from this, Early said quietly. But he'll lose all respect for you. He looked at her, his expression firm but not angry. If we want to save this marriage, somehow, we'll have to face it. Hour by hour, day by day, week by week. There was no rage in his voice, only resignation. Truth. We'll have to slowly rebuild something, and maybe, over time, find a way to communicate again. He turned his gaze back to the garden. The sunlight danced across the perfect lawn, but when he looked back into the living room, it felt like staring into a dark dungeon. I'm willing to try, he said. In the coming months, we can talk, really talk, about what marriage means to each of us. And maybe we can save it. He paused. Suzanne, I still love you. With that, he walked over and unlocked the glass patio doors. He stepped outside and closed them quietly behind him. From the other side of the glass, he could still hear the sound of his wife's soft, broken sobs echoing in the silence.